Hello, my name is Thomas Baker, and I'll be giving this presentation on profiling, CRJ 340, Miss Lori Battles class. Profiling is the recording and analysis of a person's psychological and behavioral characteristics that will allow us to assess and predict their capabilities, meaning what they're capable of, what can they do, what would they do, and what they might do in the future. Profiling is a tool used by law enforcement and everyday individuals to assess the threat of a group of people or a person. Those that are not law enforcement call it stereotyping, and they place people into groups by the way they look, they act, they talk, so on and so forth. The types of profiling that I have broke down for the presentation, we have racial profiling, which we all know is the judgment of a person or a group of people based on the color of their skin, uh, white, black, Hispanic, so on and so forth. Then you have cultural and religious profiling, which is the judgment of people based on where they're from, the culture that they're from, and their religion. Uh, and that's a very big thing here in the United States because we have a whole bunch of cultures all over the United States with different religions and whatnot. Individual profiling happens to the individual where you profile one single person based on their acts, the way they look, uh, their religion, all sorts of stuff go into individual profiling. Racial profiling has come under intense debate in this country, and rightfully so. I firmly believe that racial profiling is wrong. Like you just don't base judgments on somebody or predict who somebody is based on the characteristics of their skin. So you don't judge somebody just because they're white and you don't call them a racist. You don't judge somebody because they're black and put them into a certain group, and you don't judge somebody because they're Hispanic and put them into a certain group. You just don't do that because 99% of the time when you do this, you're wrong, and it's just wrong. But law enforcement officers are obviously trained to profile people. So a lot of the time when law enforcement officers are blamed for racial profiling, it wasn't actually racial profiling. It was just the profiling of an individual based on their behavior and the way they were acting. So, but flat out racial profiling itself is wrong. Cultural and religious profiling. Okay, there's a lot of police agencies around the world that use this. Our Department of Homeland Security uses it. The Israelis use it over in the Middle East. Germany uses it. A lot of major federal agencies, if you will, use it. The FBI uses it. Everybody uses it, and it does work. It does work. There's been multiple terrorist attacks stopped because of cultural and religious profiling, and they didn't really profile an entire group of people. They profiled an individual, and we're about to get into individual profiling here shortly. But yeah, it does work, and it's a very good tool to use if you're trained and know how to use it. Individual profiling. It generally takes place after a crime has been committed, but it does take place a lot of the times before a crime is committed because When you look at if we let somebody into this country on a visa, or we're deciding whether somebody should be a citizen or not, there's a lot of paperwork that goes down. There's a lot of interviews that they have to go to, and they're pretty much profiled on whether or not they're safe to be in this country or not. So should we allow this person in? Should we not allow this person in? So on and so forth. But it does happen a lot of the times after a crime has been committed. And for example, Ted Bundy, one of the most prolific serial killers in United States history, was interviewed multiple times after he was caught, just to profile the way he thought and the way he acted, and pretty much to get inside his head and pick his brain. So we built an entire profile around this guy, which helps us understand people that commit major heinous crimes. So profiling itself, again, is a tool, and is used for bigger purposes, not necessarily a discrimination thing. It's a tool, as I said, and it is used in a lot of other ways. The real question here is, should profiling be used by law enforcement? Is it used to discriminate against a certain group of people? Well, no, it's not used to discriminate against a certain group of people. The actual tool of profiling is used to prevent crimes from happening most of the time. So, yes, like a certain group of people will be picked out. Like, for example, if you were a TSA security guard at an airport, would you pull over the old white lady in a dress, or would you stop the military-age male traditional Muslim garb? You would stop that person and search them. Though everybody is searched there, they try to make it as, indiscriminate as possible. That does happen. And another question here, is the use of profiling ethical? I would say so. Yes, I believe profiling is ethical. There's nothing unethical about it unless it's used in the wrong way. It's just like any other tool. You can use a hammer in the wrong way, okay? And profiling can be used wrong too, but 99% of the time, profiling is used right, and it works. It does work. It's been proven to work. There's been many terror attacks stopped throughout this country and other countries because of profiling. They profiled an individual or a group of individuals, and they assessed their capabilities and what they were probably going to do, and attacks were stopped and violence was stopped. And it doesn't work all the time, but it does work. As I said, profiling is a tool. Profiling is ethical, in my opinion. Yes, it is. So this is a tool that is to be used, and I agree with it. It can be misused, as I said earlier. 99% of the times, it's right. Mistakes are made, obviously, but I mean, profiling is really is a science. It's not a perfect system. But then again, we don't really have a lot of perfect systems, and this is one way we can get ahead of crime and stop it before it happens. To profile psychological and behavioral characteristics, as you saw earlier in the presentation, it does work. It does work, and it does help to identify potential criminals or terrorists, and it also helps to identify suspects. And when we were talking about profiling, we talked about race, culture, religion, and the individual. But a big side of profiling is the behavioral aspect of it. a lot of profiling has to do with behavior. Like, you act a certain way when you're doing something wrong. You act a certain way when you're lying. Uh, Everybody knows this. So learning how to read those cues on people is really big for law enforcement, and I personally believe there should be a lot more training in it. In summary, there are many different parts to be able to accurately profile, but it is an invaluable tool, especially when it's done right. Uh, it has many working parts in it, as I said earlier. Culture, religion, and the individual play a major part in a working profile. So you can be part of a culture and a religion, but the individual itself also plays a huge role. And behavior, as I stated on the slide before this, plays a big role in profile. Like, you know when someone's doing something wrong. Their body language is different. They move different. They talk different. They approach people differently. When they're approached, they act differently. There's a whole bunch of things that go into it. It is used in almost every country but ours. I mean, yes, ours uses it, but there's a stigma that's been put on profiling in this country. For some reason, we here in this country feel that it is wrong to profile people. I don't think it's wrong at all. I think it needs to be done. Uh, and if they profile somebody and the profile is wrong, that will eventually be found out. Yes, mistakes are made, that happens, but it is not used 99% of the time to discriminate against somebody. And when discrimination does happen in profiling, generally it's found out. So I believe profiling is completely ethical and it's a good tool to use. And that is my presentation.